Okay, the whole time I was muted there, gang. So I was waxing lyrical for how good 40's work was there, but I realized I didn't have the microphone on. I heard you fart. Yeah, in your dreams. It was a burp. Um, Thank you, 40. Look at that. Hey girl, how you doing, Prackler? Um, we're just gonna leave that up for a minute, I think, because it's too cute. Um, yeah. Thank you, Monster Heart. Awesomeness. Appreciate that. I really do. Um, Also, Missing Sala. I don't know if you're there. Thank you also for that. 54 viewers got rated. Did people tell Mishi of the chili? Which chili? Jolly Han. Um, Hang on. Where are we to? Which one? No, I've got too many cameras open. This one? No, this one. Silly. It wasn't a chili, it was a stew. Who made stew? Logan made chili, made a chili stew. Did he put what he was cooking? He did a cooking stream. That would be good. Did he put coffee in it and chocolate? You can bully chat here too, Dead Plant, yeah, but they might bully you back, especially when you're reading Popo. Use lemons and carrots and corn in a chili. Yeah. You put oregano. Yeah, oregano in a chili. I think Mexican chili might have oregano. Mexican oregano. Um, Please help Mama. No, Mama can do the washing up. I'm not doing do that. Got my Poe mug. Let's read a Poe. Never to suffer would have been, uh, never to have been blessed. Never to suffer would have been never to have been blessed. There we go. It's a great mug, isn't it? I'm still not. Alison, who was the name of the friend again? The hair's looking a bit comb-overy for my liking, but thank you for that. It's a good sized mug, Dmash 69. It is a good mug. Thank you, ICP Yowie, for the support there. Looking sleek. 1980s apparently. Cactalius, why? What have I done now? Kylie, okay, cool. I'm doing very well. Uh, what was the poll about again? But thanks for bringing it up, Prickly Triangle. Which poll to say who the best is? Leaving already? We've only just started. Deary me. I will be reading today. Yeah, we'll be cooking on Sunday. Mexican soup. Nice Kermit. 5-stream streak. We likes it. Hi, Royal Blue Heart. With his driving. Oh, because you can't drive on the right side. I'm not telling you you had your chance. Oh, please. Somebody will spill the tea, so to speak. The fart pole. Lovecraft would be nice. We might do Lovecraft. Yeah, you're leaving tomorrow. I know. But it's interesting you're listening in real time rather than with the time difference. Uh, what tea we spilling? Oh, there was a poll. Cactalis, some poll. Um, yes, you were right. I forgot about it. I mean, my memory's about as good as uh, not that good. Depends, really. It's slightly ironic because I remember facts and shit. But so No, bubbling. I think it's fine actually. The white cheese, I don't think it's such a problem. You could use, you might find paneer, which is the Indian cheese, or something equivalent to that. It's just like a fresh cheese. It's not been matured too long. Um, but I know there's a restaurant in Prague. They just bang a bit of cheddar in it, but don't tell the Mexicans. Some crumbly cheese, yeah. I mean, you don't want to use feta; it's too salty. And then with the chilies, mm, what you can, I mean, I've looked it up, and you can just use like flaked chilies, but the problem is they're like super spicy in comparison. If we want to get into that, I'm not an expert like Mr. Mark Cram, but you can just use goat cheese. Yeah, there we go. Some crumbly goat cheese. Nothing that's too yeah. And then with the chili, yeah, that 40, that stuff that he gave you though, like use sparingly and wash your hands thoroughly afterwards. Otherwise, you might live to regret that. So bubbly. Another thing about the chilies is you feel like use that you can go to the Potravini and get some. Maybe the Vietnamese have some, but like you want a tiny bit because those chilies they're talking about in the recipe, they're like yay long. What's that? 15 centimeters dried, and two of those will give a pleasant heat. Yeah, they're somewhere on 1,000 to 1,500, 1,500 on the Scoville scale, and those chili flakes are somewhere around 20, 30,000. So it's a big difference. Um, Shredded chicken is not. It is optional actually because I read that sopa azteca does not technically have meat in it. It's called something else when it has meat in it. But this is the problem, isn't it? Regionally, it's going to vary. Mexico's a big old country as well. 15 centimeters is a great size for a chili. Yeah, it's sufficient. Sufficient, I think. You know, I mean, you could go for a bigger chili, but it might end up being too much. Um, yeah, and beer. Oh my God, some beer. Um, yes, I like that stuff too. Perry 1983. But the thing is, for this recipe, though, they don't want to be too hot. Yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, you could, and the other thing is they're supposed to be dried, right? So, I mean, if you can't find them, you can't find them. Um, yeah, can't I make the soup because you're heading to Japan? Well, look at you, look at you, eh? You're fancy little jet, eh? Um, anyway, you can do a little bit of Googling and just see what alternatives. Um, you're working till 7 p.m. Crikey. Oh, the teachers don't have it easy. Make it spicy and cry and stream. Take me with you. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. All right. Thanks for cheers at the piano. Um. What we're gonna do? You got withdrawals from the goulash Draco Manowari affair. You tried to make goulash. Yeah, you need lots of paprika. The Czech way is not is one way, but the Hungarian way. All right, Elkenan, what kind of writing you doing? What you working on before you head off? Um, what did we read already? Yeah, 1,300 followers. I know. I should be whooping that up, shouldn't I? Whoop whoop. 1,300 followers. Spell that I don't know. Is it some kind of yowie shit between me and Logan? shh, 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 shh. The Pit and the Pendulum, we did that already. I didn't say nothing. You never heard nothing. It's not going to be on video on demand or anything. Um, look, Yeah, I know what it is. You're just doing some. It's very innocent writing about the lives of rabbits and what they need to do to survive in a very bitter and cold world, surrounded by harsh realities such as foxes and wolves. And you know, that's the way it goes. What brand of paprika do you for what for my goulash or for this Mexican soup? Um, Alison, I I mean Hungarian. If I can find Hungarian, uh, you fetched me a beer. Dude, nothing happened. I was just like baiting. Okay. Um. Oh, I don't know Hungarian. Thank you, Ziggy Wiggy Stardust. Awesomeness. El Cannon, all in jest. Um, I hope I get to read some of it today at some point. I'm not um whatever rage baiting and vague posting it with Papa, and it just you have to clean up after you. Sorry, Sally. Sorry. Back to the paprika question because that's a little bit uh um. I think we allow that, can't we? Auto mod. What? Um. No, okay, so Paprika. There's a hype train going as well. What's going on tonight? This is a Wednesday night. Um, unlock a random emoji. Okay, maybe. Is it? Unlock now? I don't know. Uh, what? Oh, I don't know how this works. Here we go. I have some anonymous gift subs as well. My goodness, we're flying tonight. What's going on here? This is. I've got a hype level train. What? Choo choo. I'm not being spooked. I just don't know where I'm supposed to give these emotes away. I made bean stew with meat, Turkish style. Get in hot chili flakes. I'll have it. Paprika, Hungarian paprika. It's not a specific type, but their smoked paprika is pretty awesome as well. You can ignore them if you want, Mishi. We won't be mad. No, no. I want to. I like. Um, I want to understand how to unlock now. It just says unlockable emotes, but it's not letting me unlock them somehow. They're all locked because it's level something or other. Unlock now. Uh, what? Come on. Oh, it even says who's the conductor. Bob. Okay, I got to get my head around this at some point. That's a whole level of something else. Um, you need a key, not for you. You have to. Oh, I see. I see. Okay. It's nothing to do with me. I'll just ignore it. Have we been over this before? Probably Royal Blue Heart, but as established by Cactalius just a while back, my memory is goddamn awful. Thank you, Prickly Triangle, for pointing that out. You've kind of given up on trying to understand Twitch shenanigans. Not that I really tried either. Yeah. Um, the three numbers from the back of my that's why you are here. I know. All right. Um, so what we're going to do? We're going to read some Poe tonight, and I think this might. Goddamn mustache. This might be our second to last week of reading Poe. Um, Mainly because Up train level 4. Plus the last one on the social. Yes, please. Don't be sad, Babush Toad. It's not. We're not going to stop reading. We're just going to be reading something else. Um. Hey, Hangover. Um. You, what did you do to? Who did you kill, Prickly? Yeah, but still nobody's. Oh, thank you, Babush Toad. Look at that. Boom. We're in. Pipe train. At some point, somebody, Oscar Wilde, maybe, but I thought to do Sherlock Holmes because I do like a bit of Sherlock Holmes. Who's gonna die horribly tonight? Yes, yes, yes. And we might alternate a bit more. I think I will miss Edgar too, but we've been with Edgar since November now. When did I start streaming? Back in November, and I can read some of the fan fiction stuff as well. That's what I'm planning to do. Yes, Magoose, we're probably going to do Sherlock Holmes. Um, Holmes, Lovecraft. It has been that long, Prickly. Yeah, I think so. I think I started in November. Um, October, actually. Ah, that's right. That's right. Because yes, yes, because I was modding for. Oh, that's right. You were mod. That's right. Someone had to take over the mods. Haha. Did I get my emotes picked up and sorted? I'm so very awful at this. Peshek the Miller slut. Yeah, Sherlock Holmes, a bit of Conan Doyle and Lovecraft. Um, Morning on the Wissahickon. This is Poe, yes? Okay. Morning on the Wissahickon. Mm. Doo-ba-doo. Ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. Morning on the Wissahickon. Here, is that a poem, Alison? There's an elk in it for Elkennan, but Elkennan's left now in disgrace and disgust after my terrible, terrible betrayal of everything decent. Um, Why can I not find it? The conversation of Eros and Charmion. God damn it. What's it called again? Look at this memory. Memory of a wombat. Morning on the Wissahickon. Why can I not find it? The predicament mystification. The assignation. And we're not going to give up Poe because we're going to come back and dive in and out of Poe. I cannot find this goddamn thing. Um, I'm sure. I'm sure it's in here. Oh, the elk. Maybe that's what it's known as. The Sphinx. The elk. Come on, Poe. Stop making me look bad. Exactly, Alison. Hitting the pendulum over. Dude. The angel, the man, the businessman. The man that was used as the businessman. The Sphinx, the man of the crowd. Four beasts in one. Homeo Camelopard. Oh, that sounds like my character in Lord of Misrule. The Quacks of Helicon, a satire. The Tale of the Ragged Mountains, the Spectacles, the Oblong Books, Devil in the Belfry. Well, I'll be buggered if I can find it now. All right. Choo choo. We're gonna rage one. Oblong Box is good. Also only about 9 pages. All right. I don't know what to say about the elk or the I'll have one last look through. Maybe I'm just being daft. The gold box, the balloon hooks, and then we'll go with the other one. Purloined letter, black cat, for mark, island, oval, designation, telltale heart, literary thingamajiggy, mystification, diddling, the angel, loss of breath, the man that was used at Moses, tale of Jerusalem. Well, I'll be dick and dog do the oblong box. Okay, well, 7-Eleven. Nirvana mention. 7-Eleven. We read The Duke of L'Omelette. What's the name of the book? This particular book, is the Penguin Books, the Penguin Complete Tales of Poems of Edgar Allan Poe, is what it is. Thank you, like a son of a gun. I appreciate that. Have I ever been to a 7-Eleven? Did I? I'm not sure specifically to a 7-Eleven now. I can't remember. I mean, I've been to the States. Yeah, I mean, yeah, do it. I mean, it's a bit odd because I mean, somebody found that it's about out and about. It's out and about, as some Canadians might say. All right. Are you sitting comfortably? I am not, so I'm about to make myself so. Can't believe we had a hype train. I'm quite excited by that. Um, Sorry, just checking in there. Right. Okay, kiddos. Here we go. Hello, Sneaky Gina. Um, Exceptionally ready. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Um, oh, nice. Thank you, Alison. I'm in shorts, guys. Fucking hell. Tell you what, this seat's getting a bit risky. Here we go. Look at that. Thank you, Babush Toad. Short stream. I know. I'm cozy at home. The oblong box. Some years ago, I engaged passage from Charleston, SC, that'll be South Carolina, to the city of New York in the fine packet ship Independence, Captain Hardy. We were to sail on the 15th of the month, June, weather permitting, and on the 14th, I went on board to arrange some matters in my stateroom. I find that we were to have a great many passengers, including a more than usual number of ladies. On the list were several of my acquaintances, and among other names, I was rejoiced to see that of Mr. Cornelius Wyatt, a young artist for whom I entertained feelings of warm friendship. He had been with me a fellow student at California something C University, where we were very much together. He had the ordinary temperament of genius and was a compound of misanthropy, sensibility, and enthusiasm. To these qualities he united the warmest and truest heart which ever beat in a human bosom. 31, I believe. I observed that his name was carded up 3 staterooms, and upon again referring to the list of passengers, I found that he had engaged passage for himself, wife, and 2 sisters, his own. The staterooms were sufficiently roomy, and each had 2 berths, one above the other. These berths, to be sure, were so exceedingly narrow as to be insufficient for more than one person. Still, I could not comprehend why there were 3 staterooms for these 4 persons. I was, just at that epoch, in one of these moody frames of mind which make a man abnormally inquisitive about trifles, and I confess with shame that I busied myself in a variety of ill-bred and preposterous conjectures about this matter of the supernumerary state-room. It was no business of mine, to be sure, but with none the less pertinacity did I occupy myself in attempts to resolve the enigma. At last I reached a conclusion which wrought in me great wonder why I had not arrived at it before. "It is a servant, of course," I said. "What a fool am I not to sooner have thought of so obvious a solution." And then again repaired I to the list. But here I saw distinctly that no servant was to come with the party, although, in fact, it had been the original design to bring one, for the words "and servant" had been first written and then overscored. "Oh, extra baggage, to be sure," I now said to myself. "Something he wishes not to be put in the hold, something to be kept under his own eye. I have it. A painting or so." And this was what he had been bargaining about with Nicolino, the Italian Jew. This idea satisfied me, and I dismissed my curiosity for the nonce. Wyatt's 2 sisters I knew very well, and most amiable and clever girls they were. His wife he had newly married, and I had never yet seen her. He had often talked about her in my presence, however, and in his usual style of enthusiasm. He described her as of surpassing beauty, wit, and accomplishment. I was therefore quite anxious to make her acquaintance. On the day in which I visited the ship, the 14th, Wyatt and party were also to visit it, so the captain informed me, and I waited on board an hour longer than I had designed in hope of being presented to the bride, but then an apology came. Mrs. W. was a little indisposed, and we declined coming on board until tomorrow at the hour of sailing. The morrow having arrived, I was going from my hotel to the wharf when Captain Hardy met me and said, "Owing to circumstances," a stupid but convenient phrase, he rather thought the Independence would not sail for a day or 2, and that when all was ready he would send up and let me know. This I thought strange, for there was a stiff southerly breeze, but as the circumstances were not forthcoming, although I pumped for them with such much perseverance, I had nothing to do but to return home and digest my impatience at leisure. I did not receive the expected message from the captain for nearly a week. It came at length, however, and I immediately went on board. The ship was crowded with passengers, and everything was in the bustle attendant upon making sail. Wyatt's party arrived in about 10 minutes after myself. There were the 2 sisters, the bride, and the artist, the latter in one of his customary fits of moody misanthropy. I was too well used to these, however, to pay them any special attention. He did not even introduce me to his wife, this courtesy devolving perforce upon his sister Marian, a very sweet and intelligent girl, who, in a few hurried words, made us acquainted. Mrs. Wyatt had been closely veiled, and when she'd raised her veil in acknowledging my bow, I confess that I was profoundly astonished. I should have been much more so, however, had not long experience advised me not to trust with too implicit a reliance the enthusiastic descriptions of my friend the artist when indulging in comments upon the loveliness of a woman. When beauty was the theme, I well knew with what facility he soared into the regions of the purely ideal. The truth is, I could not help regarding Mrs. Wyatt as a decidedly plain looking woman. If not positively ugly, she was not, I think, very far from it. She was dressed, however, in exquisite taste, and then I had no doubt that she had captivated my friend's heart by the more enduring graces of the intellect and soul. She said very few words, and passed at once into her stateroom with Mr. W. My old inquisitiveness now returned. There was no servant. That was a settled point. I looked therefore for the extra baggage. After some delay, a cart arrived at the wharf with an oblong pine box, which was everything that seemed to be expected. Immediately upon its arrival, we made sail, and in a short time were safely over the bar and standing out at sea. The box in question was, as I say, oblong. It was about 6 feet in length by 2.5 in breadth. I observed it attentively and liked to be precise. Now, this shape was peculiar, and no sooner had I seen it than I took credit to myself for the accuracy of my guessing. I had reached the conclusion, it will be remembered, that extra baggage of my friend, the artist, could prove to be pictures, or at least a picture, for I knew he had been for several weeks in conference with Nicolino. And now here was a box which, from its shape, could possibly contain nothing in the world but a copy of Leonardo's Last Supper. And a copy of this very Last Supper, done by Rubini the Younger at Florence, I had known for some time to be in the possession of Nicolino. This point, therefore, I considered as sufficiently settled. I chuckled excessively when I thought of my acumen. It was the first time I had ever known Wyatt to keep from me any of his artistical secrets, but here he evidently intended to steal a march upon me and smuggle a fine picture to New York under my very nose, expecting me to know nothing of the matter. I resolved to quiz him well, now and hereafter. One thing, however, annoyed me not a little. The box did not go into the extra stateroom. It was deposited in Wyatt's own, and there, too, it remained, occupying very nearly the whole of the floor, no doubt to the exceeding discomfort of the artist and his wife. This the more especially as the tar or paint with which it was lettered in scrawling capitals admitted a strong, disagreeable, and, to my fancy, a peculiarly disgusting odour. On the lid were painted the words, Mrs. Adelaide Curtis, Albany, New York, charge of Cornelius Wyatt, Esquire, this side up, to be handled with care. Now, I was aware that Mrs. Adelaide Curtis of Albany was the artist's wife's mother, but then I looked upon the whole address as a mystification, intended especially for myself. I made up my mind, of course, that the box and contents would never get further north than the studio of my misanthropic friend in Chambers Street, New York. For the first 3 or 4 days we had fine weather, although the wind was dead ahead, having chopped around to the north immediately upon our losing sight of the coast. The passengers were consequently in high spirits and disposed to be social. I must except, however, Wyatt and his sisters, who behaved stiffly, and I could not help thinking uncourteously to the rest of the party. Wyatt's conduct I did not so much regard. He was gloomy even beyond his usual habit. In fact, he was morose, but in him I was prepared for eccentricity. For the sisters, however, I could make no excuse. They secluded themselves in their staterooms during the greater part of the passage and absolutely refused, although I repeatedly urged them, to hold communication with any person on board. Mrs. Wyatt herself was far more agreeable, that is to say, she was chatty, and to be chatty is no slight recommendation at sea. She became excessively intimate with most of the ladies, and to my profound astonishment evinced no equivocal disposition to coquet with the men. She amused us all very much. I say amused. I scarcely know how to explain myself. The truth is, I soon found that Mrs. W. was far oftener laughed at than with. The gentlemen said little about her, but the ladies, in a little while, pronounced her a good-hearted thing, rather indifferent-looking, totally uneducated, and decidedly vulgar. The great wonder was how Wyatt had been entrapped into such a match. Wealth was the general solution, but this I knew to be no solution at all, for Wyatt had told me that she neither brought him a dollar nor had any expectations from any source whatsoever. He had married, he said, for love, and for love only, and his bride was far more than worthy of his love. When I thought of these expressions on the part of my friend, I confess that I felt indescribably puzzled. Could it be possible that he was taking leave of his senses? What else could I think? He, so refined, so intellectual, so fastidious, with so exquisite a perception of the faulty, and so keen an appreciation of the beautiful. To be sure, the lady seemed especially fond of him, particularly so in his absence, when she made herself ridiculous by frequent quotations of what had been said by her beloved husband, Mr. Wyatt. The word husband seemed forever, to use one of her own delicate expressions, forever on the tip of her tongue. In the meantime, it was observed by all on board that he avoided her in the most pointed manner, and for the most part shut himself up alone in his stateroom, where in fact he might have been said to live altogether, leaving his wife at full liberty to amuse herself as she thought best in the public society of the main cabin. My conclusion, from what I saw and heard, was that the artist, by some accountable freak of fate, or perhaps in some fit of enthusiastic and fanciful passion, had been induced to unite himself with a person altogether beneath him, and that the natural result, entire and speedy disgust, had ensued. I pitied him from the bottom of my heart, but could not, for that reason, quite give his incommunicativeness in the matter of the Last Supper. For this I resolved to have my revenge. One day he came upon deck, and taking his arm as had been my wont, I sauntered with him backward and forward. His gloom, however, which I considered quite natural under the circumstances, seemed entirely unabated. He said little, and that moodily and with evident effort. I ventured a jest or two, and he made a sickening attempt at a smile, poor fellow, and as I thought of his wife, I wondered what he would have heart to put on even the semblance of mirth. At last I ventured a home thrust. I determined to commence a series of covert insinuations or innuendos about the oblong box, just to let him perceive gradually that I was not altogether the butt or victim of his little bit of pleasant mystification. My first observation was by way of opening a masked battery. I said something about the peculiar shape of that box, and as I spoke the words, a smile knowingly winked and touched him gently with my forefinger in the ribs. The manner in which Wyatt received this harmless pleasantry convinced me at once that he was mad. At first he stared at me as if he had found it impossible to comprehend the witticism of my remark, but as its points seemed slowly to make its way into his brain, his eyes, in the same proportion, seemed protruding from their sockets. Then he grew very red, then hideously pale, then, as if highly amused with what I had insinuated, he began a loud and boisterous laugh, which, to my astonishment, he kept up with gradually increasing vigour for 10 minutes or more. In conclusion, he fell flat and heavily upon the deck, and when I ran to uplift him, to all appearances, he was dead. I called assistance, and with much difficulty we brought him to himself. Upon reviving, he spoke incoherently for some time. At length we bled him and put him to bed. The next morning he was quite recovered, so as far as regarded his mere bodily health. Of his mind I say nothing, of course. I avoided him during the rest of the passage, by advice of the captain, who seemed to coincide with me altogether in my views of his insanity, but cautioned me to say nothing on this head to any person on board. Several circumstances occurred immediately after this fit of Wyatt's, which contributed to heighten the curiosity with which I was already possessed. Among other things, this. I had been nervous, drank too much strong green tea, and slept ill at night. In fact, for 2 nights I could not be properly said to sleep at all. Now, my stateroom opened into the main cabin or dining room, as did those of all single men on board. Wyatt's 3 rooms were in the after cabin, which was separated from the main one by a slight sliding door, never locked even at night. As we were almost constantly on a wind, and the breeze was not a little stiff, the ship heeled to leeward very considerably, and whenever her starboard side was to leeward, the sliding door between the cabins slid open, and so remained, nobody taking the trouble to get up and shut it. But my berth was in such a position that when my stateroom door was open, as well as the sliding door in question, and my own door was always open on account of the heat, I could see into the after cabin quite distinctly, and just that portion of it too were situated in the staterooms of Mr. Wyatt. Well, during 2 nights, not consecutive, while I lay awake, I clearly saw Mrs. W. about 11 o'clock upon each night steal cautiously from the stateroom of Mr. W. and enter the extra room, where she remained until daybreak, when she was called by her husband and went back. That they were virtually separated was clear. They had separated apartments, no doubt in contemplation of a more permanent divorce, and here, after all, I thought, was the mystery of the extra stateroom. There was another circumstance, too, which interested me much. During the 2 wakeful nights in question, and immediately after the disappearance of Mrs. Wyatt into the extra stateroom, I was attracted by certain singular, cautious, subdued noises in that of her husband. After listening to them for some time with thoughtful attention, I at length succeeded perfectly in translating their import. They were sounds occasioned by the artist in prying open the oblong box by means of a chisel and mallet, the latter being apparently muffled or deadened by some soft woolen or cotton substance in which its head was enveloped. In this manner I fancied I could distinguish the precise moment when he fairly disengaged the lid, also that I could determine when he removed it altogether, and when he deposited it upon the lower berth in his room. This latter point I knew, for example, by certain slight taps which the lid made in striking against the wooden edge of the berth, as he endeavoured to lay it down very gently, there being no room for it on the floor. After this there was a dead stillness, and I heard nothing more, upon either occasion, until nearly daybreak, unless perhaps I may mention a low sobbing or murmuring sound, so very much suppressed as to be nearly inaudible, if indeed the whole of this latter noise were not rather produced by my own imagination. I say it seemed to resemble sobbing or sighing, but of course it could have been neither. I rather think it was a ringing in my own ears. Mr. Wyatt, no doubt, according to custom, was merely giving the rein to one of his hobbies, indulging in one of his fits of artistic enthusiasm. He had opened his oblong box in order to feast his eyes on the pictorial treasure within. There was nothing in this, however, to make him sob. I repeat, therefore, that it must have been simply a freak of my own fancy, distempered by good Captain Hardy's green tea. Just before dawn, on each of the 2 nights of which I speak, I distinctly heard Mr. Wyatt replace the lid upon the oblong box, and force the nails into their old places by means of the muffled mallet. Having done this, he issued from his stateroom fully dressed, and proceeded to call Mrs. W. from hers. We had been at sea for 7 days, and were now off Cape Hatteras, when there came a tremendously heavy blow from the southwest. We were, in a measure, prepared for it, however, as the weather had been holding out threats for some time. Everything was made snug, alow and aloft, and, as the wind steadily freshened, we lay to at length under spanker and fore topsail, both double reefed. In this trim we rode safely enough for 48 hours, the ship proving herself an excellent sea-boat in many respects, and shipping no water of any consequence. At the end of this period, however, The gale had freshened into a hurricane, and our aftersail split into ribbons, bringing us so much in the trough of the water that we shipped several prodigious seas, one immediately after the other. By this accident, we lost 3 men overboard with the caboose, nearly the whole of the larboard bulwarks. Scarcely had we recovered our senses before the fore topsail went into shreds, when we got up a storm staysail, and with this did pretty well for some hours, the ship heading the sea much more steadily than before. The gale still held on, however, and we saw no signs of its abating. The rigging was found to be ill-fitted and greatly strained, and on the third day of the blow, about 5 in the afternoon, our mizzenmast, in a heavy lurch to the windward, went by the board. For an hour or more, we tried in vain to get rid of it, on account of the prodigious rolling of the ship, and before we had succeeded, the carpenter came aft and announced 4 feet of water in the hold. To add to our dilemma, we found the pumps choked and nearly useless. All now was confusion and despair, but an effort was made to lighten the ship by throwing overboard as much of her cargo as could be reached, and by cutting away the 2 masts that remained. This we at last accomplished, but we were still unable to do anything at the pumps, and in the meantime the leak gained on us very fast. At sundown the gale had sensibly diminished in violence, and as the sea went down with it, we still entertained faint hopes of saving ourselves and the boats. At 8 p.m. the clouds broke away to the windward, and we had the advantage of full moon, a piece of good fortune which served wonderfully to cheer our drooping spirits. After incredible labour, we succeeded at length in getting the longboat over the side without material accident, and into this we crowded the whole of the crew and most of the passengers. This party made off immediately, and after undergoing much suffering, finally arrived in safety at Ocracoke Inlet on the third day after the wreck. 14 passengers with the captain remained on board, resolving to trust their fortunes to the jolly boat at the stern. We lowered it without difficulty, although it was only by miracle that we prevented it from swamping as it touched the water. It contained, when afloat, the captain and his wife, Mr. Wyatt and party, a Mexican officer, wife, 4 children, and myself with a Negro valet. We had no room, of course, for anything except a few positively necessary instruments, some provisions, and the clothes upon our backs. No one had thought of even attempting to save anything more. What must have been the astonishment of all, then, when, having proceeded a few fathoms from the ship, Mr. Wyatt stood up in the stern sheets and coolly demanded of Captain Hardy that the boat should be put back for the purposes of taking in his oblong box. "Sit down, Mr. Wyatt," replied the captain somewhat sternly. "You will capsize us if you do not sit quite still. Our gunwale is almost in the water now." "The box," vociferated Mr. Wyatt, still standing. "The box, I say. Captain Hardy, you will not refuse me. Its weight will be but a trifle. It is nothing, mere nothing. By the mother who bore you, for the love of heaven, by your only hope and salvation, I implore you to put back for the box." The captain for a moment seemed touched by the earnest appeal of the artist, but he regained his stern composure and merely said, "Mr. Wyatt, you are mad. I cannot listen to you. Sit down, I say, or you will swamp the boat. Stay, hold him, seize him. He's about to spring overboard. There, I knew it. He's over." As the captain said this, Mr. Wyatt in fact sprang from the boat, and as we were yet in the lee of the wreck, succeeded by almost superhuman exertion in getting hold of a rope which hung from the forechains. In another moment he was on board, rushing frantically down into the cabin. In the meantime, we had been swept astern of the ship, and being quite out of her lee, were at the mercy of the tremendous sea which was still running. We made a determined effort to put back, but our little boat was like a feather in the breath of the tempest. We saw at a glance that the doom of the unfortunate artist was sealed. As our distance from the wreck rapidly increased, the madman, for as such only could we regard him, was seen to emerge from the companionway, up which, by dint of strength that appeared gigantic, he dragged bodily the oblong box. While we gazed in the extremity of astonishment, he passed rapidly several turns of a 3-inch rope, first around the box, then around his body. And in another instant, both body and box were in the sea, disappearing suddenly at once and forever. We lingered a while sadly upon our oars, with our eyes riveted upon the spot. At length we pulled away, the silence unbroken for a few hours. Finally, I hazarded a remark. "Did you observe, Captain, how suddenly they sank? Was not that an exceedingly singular thing? I confess that I entertained some feeble hope of his final deliverance when I saw him lash himself to the box and commit himself to the sea." "They sank as a matter of course," replied the captain, "and that like a shot. That they will soon rise again, however, but not till the salt melts." "The salt?" I ejaculated. "Hush," said the captain, pointing to the wife and sisters of the deceased. "We must talk of these things at some more appropriate time." We suffered much and made a narrow escape, but fortune befriended us as well as our mates in the longboat. We landed, in fine, more dead than alive, after 4 days of intense distress upon the beach opposite Roanoke Island. We remained here a week, were not ill treated by the wreckers, and at length obtained a passage to New York. About a month after the loss of the Independence, I happened to meet Captain Hardy in Broadway. Our conversation turned, naturally, upon the disaster, and especially upon the sad fate of poor Wyatt. I thus learned the following particulars. The artist had engaged passage for himself, wife, 2 sisters, and a servant. His wife was indeed, as she had been represented, a most lovely and most accomplished woman. On the morning of the 14th of June, the day in which I first visited the ship, the lady suddenly sickened and died. The young husband was frantic with grief, but circumstances imperatively forbade the deferring his voyage to New York. It was necessary to take her mother, the corpse of his adored wife. On the other hand, the universal prejudice which would prevent his doing so openly was well known. 9/10 of the passengers would have abandoned the ship rather than take passage with the dead body. In this dilemma, Captain Hardy arranged that the corpse, being first partially embalmed and packed with a large quantity of salt in a box of suitable dimensions, should be conveyed on board as merchandise. Nothing was to be said of the lady's decease, and as it was well understood that Mr. Wyatt had engaged passage for his wife, it became necessary that some person should personate her during the voyage. This the deceased lady's maid was easily prevailed on to do. The extra stateroom, originally engaged for this girl during her mistress's life, was now merely retained. In this stateroom the pseudo-wife slept, of course, every night, and in the daytime she performed to the best of her ability the part of her mistress, whose person, it had been carefully ascertained, was unknown to any of the passengers on board. My own mistake arose naturally enough, through too careless, too inquisitive, and too impulsive a temperament. But of late it is a rare thing that I sleep soundly at night. There is a countenance which haunts me, turn as I will. There is an hysterical laugh which will forever ring within my ears. Dear, dear, dear. Yes. When did you all work it out? Um, I kind of figured it out about 4 pages back, I think, after he turned a bit mad. Yeah, that was a good one. I like that. Yeah, the 6 feet box kind of gave it away, really. We got a bosom as well. So what? We up to 31 bosoms now, are we? I believe we're up to 31 bosoms. Oh, dearie my own. All right, let's have a poem. An uneven number of bosoms. Um, The Sleeper. Have we read The Sleeper? Don't think so. So we're going to read two poems. Yeah, we're going to read The Sleeper and then Silence. Two whole poems? Oh my god, vagabond. I don't think so. The Sleeper. At midnight in the month of June, I stand beneath the mystic moon. An opiate vapor, dewy dim, exhales from out her golden rim, and softly dripping, drop by drop, upon the quiet mountain top, steals drowsily and musically into the universal valley. The rosemary nods upon the grave, the lily lolls upon the wave, wrapping the fog about its breast, the ruin moulders into rest. Looking like Lethe, see, the lake, a conscious slumber seems to take, and would not for the world awake. All beauty sleeps, and lo, where lies her casement upon the skies, Irene with her destinies. O lady bright, can it be right, this window open to the night? The wanton airs from the tree top laughingly through the lattice drop. The bodiless airs, a wizard rout, flit through thy chamber in and out, and wave the curtain canopy so fitfully, so carefully, upon the closed and fringed lid, neath which thy slumbering soul lies hid, that o'er the floor and down the wall, like ghosts the shadows rise and fall. O lady dear, hast thou no fear? Why and what art thou dreaming here? Sure thou art come of far off seas, and wander to these garden trees. Strange is thy palace, strange thy dress, strange above all thy length of tress, and this all solemn silentness. The lady sleeps. O may her sleep which is enduring so be deep. Heaven have her in its sacred keep. This chamber change for one more holy, this bed for one more melancholy. I pray to God that she may lie for ever with unopened eye, while the dim sheeted ghosts go by. My love, she sleeps. O may her sleep, as it is lasting, so be deep. Soft may the worms about her creep. Far in the forest dim and old, for her may some tall vault unfold, some vault that oft hath flung its black and winged panels fluttering back, triumphant o'er the crested palls of her grand family funerals. Some sepulchre remote, alone, against those portals she hath thrown. In childhood many an idle stone, some tomb from out whose sounding door she never shall force an echo more. Thrilling to think, poor child of sin, it was the dead who groaned within. What did she do? That was kind of romantic, right? Oh my god. Silence. There are some qualities, some incorporate things that have a double life, which thus is made, a type of that twin entity which springs from matter and light, evinced in solid and shade. There is a twofold silence, sea and shore, body and soul. One dwells in lonely places, newly with grass o'ergrown, with some solemn graces. Some human memories and tearful lore render him terrorless, his name's no more. He is the corporate silence, dread him not. No power hath he of evil in himself. But should some urgent fate, untimely lot, bring thee to meet his shadow, nameless elf, that haunteth the lone regions where hath trod no foot of man, commend thyself to God. Oh, I'll be right back. Oh Christ. I gotta I gotta I gotta tie this goddamn thing together. Alrighty. I think we got time for another short story, haven't we? I'm sliding down into this chair. What do we got here? Oh, yeah, you got it. Arroo. Um, Hop frog. What do we know about hop frog? Hop frog, jumping frog, Albuquerque, bad open table. Uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. Mm. Oh yeah, maybe so. Um, hello, Shushuji. Shushuji. But I think we might have read that. You're right. The prizes of frogs. So frogs. Now I think we've read it. Oh, excuse me. Also, I just looked at it again, and it seems one of those Poe stories. It's just like super freaking random. Um, King Pest. Sorry, guys. I know I'm holding some words with a mummy. We read that last time. Mm. Um, did we work out uh shadow a parable? Oh, that's already, it's very short, that. And then there's silence a fable. Maybe we could read those. What happened to the elk? Did we ever work out whether the elk is in this or not? 457. Oh dear. Where's that yawning coming from? Is it because one of you's yawning and I'm catching it? The elk is online. Sorry, guys. Okay, we're going to read two shorties here. Three apples tall. Shadow, a parable. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow. Psalm of David. Ye who read I'll try that again, shall I? Ye who read are still among the living, but I who write shall have long since gone my way into the region of shadows. For indeed strange things shall happen, and secret things to be known, and many centuries shall pass away ere these memorials be seen of men. And when seen, there will be some disbelief, and some to doubt, and yet a few who will find much to ponder upon in the characters here graven with a stylus of iron. The year had been a year of terror, and of feelings more intense than terror, for which there is no name upon the earth. For many prodigies and signs had taken place, and far and wide over sea and land the black wings of the pestilence were spread abroad. To those, nevertheless, cunning in the stars, it was not unknown that the heavens wore an aspect of ill, and to me, the Greek oinos, among others, it was evident that now had arrived the alternation of that 794th year, when, at the entrance of Aries, the planet Jupiter is conjoined with the red ring of the terrible Saturnus. The peculiar spirit of the skies, if I mistake not greatly, made itself manifest, not only in the physical orb of the earth, but in the souls, imaginations, and meditations of mankind. Over some flasks of the red Chian wine within the walls of a noble hall in a dim city called Ptolemais, we sat at night a company of 7. And to our chamber there was no entrance save by a lofty door of brass. And the door was fashioned by the artisan Corinos, and being of rare workmanship was fastened from within. Black draperies likewise in the gloomy room shut out from our view the moon, the lurid stars, and the peopleless streets. But the boding and the memory of evil, they would not be so excluded. There were things around us and about of which I can render no distinct account. These things, material and spiritual, heaviness in the atmosphere, a sense of suffocation, anxiety, and above all, that terrible state of existence which the nervous experiences when the senses are keenly living and awake, and meanwhile the powers of thought lie dormant. A dead weight hung upon us. It hung upon our limbs, upon the household furniture, upon the goblets from which we drank, and all things were depressed and borne down thereby, all things save only the flames of the 7 iron lamps which illumined our revel. Uprearing themselves in tall, slender lines of light, they thus remained burning, all pallid and motionless. And in the mirror which their lustre formed upon the round table of ebony at which we sat, each of us there assembled beheld the pallor of his own countenance, and the unquiet glare in the downcast eyes of his companions, and yet we laughed and were merry in our proper way, which was hysterical, and sang the songs of Anacreon, which are madness, and drank deeply, although the purple wine reminded us of blood. For there was yet another tenant of our chamber in the person of young Zoilus, dead. At full length he lay enshrouded, the genius and the demon of the scene. Alas, he bore no portion in our mirth, save that his countenance, distorted with the plague, and his eyes, in which death had but half extinguished the fire of the pestilence, seemed to take such interest in our merriment as the dead may haply take in the merriment of those who are to die. But although I, Oinos, felt that the eyes of the departed were upon me, still I forced myself not to perceive the bitterness of their expression, and gazing down steadily into the depths of the ebony mirror, sang with a loud and sonorous voice the songs of the son of Teos. But gradually my songs they ceased, and their echoes, rolling afar off among the sable draperies of the chamber, became weak and undistinguishable, and so faded away. And lo, from among those sable draperies where the sounds of the song departed, there came forth a dark and undefined shadow, a shadow such as the moon, when low in heaven, might fashion from the figure of a man, but it was the shadow neither of man nor of God, nor of any familiar thing. and quivering a while among the draperies of the room, it fell, at length rested in full view upon the surface of the door of the brass. But the shadow was vague and formless and indefinite, and was the shadow neither of man or god, neither god of Greece, nor god of Chaldea, nor any Egyptian god. And the shadow rested upon the brazen doorway, and under the arch of the entablature of the door, and moved not, nor spoke any word, but became stationary, and remained. And the door whereupon the shadow rested was, if I remember aright, over against the feet of the young Zoilus and shrouded. But we, the seven there assembled, having seen the shadow as it came out from among the draperies, dared not steadily behold it, but cast down our eyes and gazed continually into the depths of the mirror of ebony. And at length I, Oinos, speaking some low words, demanded of the shadow its dwelling and its appellation. And the shadow answered, I am Shadow, and my dwelling is near to the catacombs of Ptolemaeus, and hard by those dim plains of illusion which border upon the foul Caronian canal. And then did we, the seven, start from our seats in horror, and stand trembling and shuddering and aghast, for the tones in the voice of the shadow were not the tones of any one being, but of a multitude of beings, and varying in their cadences from syllable to syllable, fell duskly upon our ears in the well-remembered and familiar accents of many thousand departed friends. Silence, a fable. The mountain pinnacles slumber, valleys, crags, and caves are silent. Alkman. Listen to me, said the demon as he placed his hand upon my head. The region of which I speak is a dreary region in Libya by the borders of the river Zaire, and there is no quiet there nor silence. The waters of the river have a saffron and sickly hue, and they flow not onward to the sea, but palpitate for ever and for ever beneath the red eye of the sun with a tumultuous and convulsive motion. For many miles on either side of the river's oozy bed is a pale desert of gigantic water lilies. They sigh unto one another in that solitude, and stretch toward the heavens their long and ghastly necks, and nod to and fro with their everlasting heads. And there is a distinct murmur which cometh out from among them like the rushing of subterranean water, and they sigh one unto the other. But there is a boundary to their realm, the boundary of the dark, horrible, lofty forest. There, like the waves about the Hebrides, the low underwater is agitated continually. But there is no wind throughout the heaven, and the tall primeval trees rock eternally hither and thither with a crashing and mighty sound. And from their high summits, one by one, drop everlasting dews. And at the roots, strange poisonous flowers lie writhed in perturbed slumber. And overhead, with a rustling and loud noise, the grey clouds rush westwardly for ever, until they roll, a cataract, over the fiery wall of the horizon. But there is no wind throughout the heaven, and by the shores of the river Zaire there is neither quiet nor silence. It was night, and the rain fell, and at falling it was rain, but having fallen it was blood. And I stood in the morass among the tall lilies, and the rain fell upon my head, and the lilies sighed one unto the other in the solemnity of their desolation. And all at once the moon arose through the thin ghastly mist, and was crimson in colour, and mine eyes fell upon a huge grey rock which stood by the shore of the river, and was lighted by the light of the moon. And the rock was grey, and ghastly and tall, and the rock was grey. upon its front were characters engraven on the stone, and I walked through the morass of water lilies until I came close unto the shore, that I might read the characters upon the stone. But I could not decipher them, and I was going back into the morass when the moon shone with a fuller red, and I turned. I looked again upon the rock and upon the characters, and the characters were desolation. And I looked upward, and there stood a man upon the summit of the rock, and I hid myself among the water lilies that I might discover the actions of the man. And the man was tall and stately in form, and was wrapped up from his shoulders to his feet in the toga of old Rome. And the outlines of his figure were indistinct, but his features were the features of a deity. For the mantle of the night and of the mist and of the moon and of the dew had left uncovered the features of his face, and his brow was lofty with thought, and his eye wild with care, and in the few furrows upon his cheek I read the fables of sorrow and weariness, and disgust with mankind, and a longing after solitude. And the man sat upon the rock, and leaned his head upon his hand, and looked about upon the desolation. He looked down into the low, unquiet shrubbery, and up into the tall primeval trees, and up higher at the rustling heaven, and into the crimson moon. And I lay close within shelter of the lilies, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. And the man turned his attention from the heaven, and looked out upon the dreary river Zaire, and upon the yellow ghastly waters, and upon the pale legions of the water lilies. And the man listened to the sighs of the water lilies, and to the murmur that came up from among them. And I lay close within my covert, and observed the actions of the man, and the man trembling in the solitude. But the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. And then I went down into the recesses of the morass, and waded afar in among the wilderness of lilies, and called upon the hippopotami which dwelt among the fens in the recesses of the morass. And the hippopotami heard my call, and came with the behemoth unto the foot of the rock, and roared loudly and fearfully beneath the moon. And I lay close within my covert, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. Then I cursed the elements with the curse of tumult, and a frightful tempest gathered in the heaven, where before there had been no wind. And the heaven became livid with the violence of the tempest, and the rain beat upon the head of the man, and the floods of the river came down, and the river was tormented into foam, and the water lilies shrieked within their beds, and the forest crumbled before the wind, and the thunder rolled, and the lightning fell, and the rock rocked to its foundations. And I lay close within my covert, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. And then I grew angry and cursed with the curse of silence, the river, and the lilies, and the wind, and the forest, and the heaven, and the thunder, and the sighs of the water lilies. And they became accursed, and were still. And the moon ceased to totter up its pathway to heaven, and the thunder died away, and the lightning did not flash. The clouds hung motionless, and the waters sunk to their level and remained. And the trees ceased to rock, and the water lilies sighed no more, and the murmur was heard no longer from among them, nor any shadow of sound throughout the vast, illimitable desert. And I looked upon the characters of the rock, and they were changed, and the characters were silence. And mine eyes fell upon the countenance of the man, and his countenance was wan with terror. And hurriedly he raised his head from his hand, and stood forth upon the rock, and listened. but there was no voice throughout the vast, illimitable desert, and the characters upon the rock were silence. And the man shuddered and turned his face away and fled afar off in haste, so that I beheld him no more. Now there are fine tales in the volumes of the Magi, in the iron-bound melancholy volumes of the Magi. Therein, I say, are glorious histories of the heaven and of earth and of the mighty sea, and of the genii that ruled the sea and the earth and the lofty heaven. There was too much law, too, in the sayings which were said to the Sibyls, and holy, holy things were heard of old by the dim leaves that trembled around Dodona. But as Allah liveth, that fable which the demon told me as he sat by my side in the shadow of the tomb, I hold to be the most wonderful of all. And as the demon made an end of his history, he fell back within the cavity of the tomb and laughed. And I could not laugh with the demon, and he cursed me because I could not laugh. And the lynx, which dwelleth for ever in the tomb, came out therefrom and lay down at the feet of the demon and looked at him steadily in the face. Well, I say, I like those. I like those, I have to say. Well, those are fables. That was a fable and a parable. Make that of that what you will. All right, let's see if we can find one more short story, and then mm, let me see. I think we'll leave that one till next time. We have done Rue Morgue and Red Death. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Mystification, you say? I am looking for something short. Oh, 7 pages. Okay. Mystification. Mystification it is, Alison. 354. Let me have a little sip. Tickle the old Jade. Tuned in. Wet the old whistle, exactly. Cheeky wee sip, like, of the fennel tea. Uh, right there. Um, an apology for that elk. Well, it's not my fault, is it now, Babouche told? Is it? Oh, it's helping you get a ton of stuff done. Maybe I should listen to my stream because maybe then I'll get a ton of stuff done. I'm just going to get a measure of what kind of story this is. All right. Oh, thanks, Jade. Reverse Dadzig logic. I know. Um, well, I'm glad you guys get something done. I probably need something um, along those lines. Okay, here we go. Mystification. Slid, if these be your Posadas and Montantes, I'll have none of them. Ned Knowles. The Baron Ritzner von Jung was of a noble Hungarian family, every member of which, at least as far back into antiquity as any certain records extend, was more or less remarkable for talent of some description, the majority for that species of grotesquerie in the conception of which Tieck, as scion of the house, has given a vivid, although by no means the most vivid exemplification. My acquaintance with Ritzner commenced at the magnificent Chateau Young, into which a train of droll adventures not to be made public threw me during the summer months of the year 18 something and such. Here it was that I obtained a place in his regard, and here, with somewhat more difficulty, a partial insight into his mental conformation. In latter days, this insight grew more clear, as the intimacy which had at first permitted it became more close, and when after 3 years' separation we met at G, I knew all that it was necessary to know of the character of the Baron Ritzner von Jung. I remember the buzz of curiosity which his advent excited within the college precincts the night of the 25th of June. I remember still more distinctly that while he was pronounced by all parties at first sight the most remarkable man in the world, no person made any attempt at accounting for his opinion. That he was unique appeared so undeniable that it was deemed impertinent to inquire wherein the uniquity consisted. But letting this matter pass for the present, I will merely observe that from the first moment of his setting foot within the limits of the university, he began to exercise over the habits, manners, persons, purses, and propensities of the whole community which surrounded him an influence the most extensive and despotic, yet at the same time the most indefinite and altogether unaccountable. Thus, the brief period of his residence at the university forms an era in its annals and is characterized by all classes of people appertaining to it or its dependencies as that very extraordinary epoch forming the domination of the Baron Ritzner von Jung. Upon his advent to G, he sought me out in my apartments. He was then of no particular age, by which I mean that it is impossible to form a guess respecting his age by any data personally afforded. He might have been 15 or 50, and was 21 years and 7 months. He was by no means a handsome man. No, perhaps the reverse. The contour of his face was somewhat angular and harsh. His forehead was lofty and very fair. His nose was snub, his eyes large, heavy, glassy, and meaningless. About the mouth there was more to be observed. The lips were gently protruded and rested the one upon the other after such fashion that it is impossible to conceive any, even the most complex combination of features conveying so entirely and so singly the idea of unmitigated gravity, solemnity, and repose. It will be perceived, no doubt, from what I have already said, that the Baron was one of those human anomalies, now and then to be found, who make the science of mystification the study and the business of their lives. For this science a peculiar turn of mind gave him instinctively the cue, with his physical appearance afforded him unusual facilities for carrying his projects into effect. I firmly believe that no student at G, during the renowned epoch so quaintly termed the domination of the Baron Ritzler von Jung, ever rightly entered into the mystery which overshadowed his character. I truly think that no person at the university, with the exception of myself, ever suspected him to be capable of a joke, verbal or practical, the old bulldog at the garden gate would soon have been accused. The ghost of Heraclitus, or the wig of the emeritus professor of theology, this too, when it was evident, to the most egregious and unpardonable of all conceivable tricks, whimsicalities, and buffooneries were brought about, if not directly by him, at least plainly through his intermediate agency and connivance. The beauty, if I may so call it, of his art mystique lay in that consummate ability, resulting from an almost intuitive knowledge of human nature and a most wonderful self possession, by means of which he never failed to make it appear that the drolleries he was occupied in bringing to a point arose partly in spite and partly in consequence of the laudable efforts he was making for their prevention and for the preservation of the good order and dignity of Alma Mater. The deep, the poignant, the overwhelming mortification which upon each such failure of his praiseworthy endeavours would suffuse every lineament of his countenance, left not the slightest room for doubt of his sincerity in the bosoms of even his most sceptical companions. The adroitness, too, was no less worthy of observation, by which he contrived to shift the sense of the grotesque from the creator to the created, from his own person to the absurdities to which he had given risen to. In no instance before that of which I speak have I known the habitual mystique escape the natural consequences of his manoeuvres. An attachment of the ludicrous to his own character and person, continually developed in an atmosphere of whim. My friend appeared to live only for the severities of society, and not even his own household would have for a moment associated other ideas than those of the rigid and august with the memory of the Baron Ritzner from Young. During the epoch of his residence at G, it really appeared that the demon of the dolce far niente lay like an incubus upon the university. Nothing, at least, was done beyond eating and drinking and making merry. The apartments of the students were converted into so many pot houses, and there was no pot house of them all more famous or more frequented than that of the Baron. Our carousals here were many, and boisterous, and long, and never unfruitful of events. Upon one occasion, we had protracted our sitting until nearly daybreak, and an unusual quantity of wine had been drunk. The company consisted of 7 or 8 individuals, besides the Baron and myself. Most of these were young men of wealth, of high connection, of great family pride, and all alive with an exaggerated sense of honor. They abounded in the most ultra-German opinions respecting the duello. To these quixotic notions, some recent Parisian publications, backed by 3 or 4 desperate and fatal rencontres at G, had given a new vigor and impulse, and thus the conversation, during the greater part of the night, had run wild upon the all-engrossing topic of the times. The Baron, who had been unusually silent and abstracted in the earlier portion of the evening, at length seemed to be aroused from his apathy, took a leading part in the discourse, and dwelt upon the benefits, and more especially upon the beauties, of the received code of etiquette in the passages of arms with an ardour, an eloquence, an impressiveness, and an affectionateness of manner which elicited the warmest enthusiasm from his hearers in general, absolutely staggered even myself, who well knew him to be at heart a ridiculer of those very points for which he contended, and especially to hold the entire fanfaronade of duelling etiquette in the sovereign contempt which it deserves. Looking around me during a pause in the Baron's discourse, of which my readers may gather some faint idea when I say that it bore resemblance to the fervid, chanting, monotonous yet musical sermonic manner of the Coleridge, I perceived symptoms of even more than the general interest in the countenance of one of the party. This gentleman, whom I shall call Hermann, was an original in every respect, except perhaps in the single particular that he was a very great fool. He contrived to bear, however, among a particular set at the university, a reputation for deep metaphysical thinking, and I believe for some logical talent. As a duelist, he had acquired great renown even at G. I forget the precise number of victims who had fallen at his hands, but they were many. He was a man of courage, undoubtedly, but it was upon this minute acquaintance with the etiquette of the duello and the nicety of his sense of honour that he most especially prided himself. Those things were a hobby which he rode to the death. To Ritzner, ever upon the lookout for the grotesque, his peculiarities had for a long time past afforded food for mystification. Of this, however, I was not aware, although in the present instance I saw clearly that something of a whimsical nature was upon the tapis with my friend, and that Hermann was its especial object. As the former proceeded in his discourse, or rather monologue, I perceived the excitement of the latter momently increasing. At length he spoke, offering some objection to a point insisted upon by R, and giving his reasons in detail. To these the Baron replied at length, still maintaining his exaggerated tone of sentiment, and concluding, in what I thought very bad taste, with sarcasm and a sneer. The hobby of Hermann now took the bit in his teeth. This I could discern by the studied hair-splitting farrago of his rejoinder. His last words I distinctly remember. Your opinions, allow me to say, Baron von Young, although in the main correct, are in many nice points discreditable to yourself and to the university of which you are a member. In a very few respects, they are even unworthy of serious refutation. I would say more on this, sir, were it not for the fear of giving you offence. Here the speaker smiled blandly. I would say, sir, that your opinions are not the opinions to be expected from a gentleman. As Hermann completed his equivocal sentence, all eyes were turned upon the Baron. He became pale, then excessively red, then dropping his pocket handkerchief, stooped to recover it. Excuse me, stooped to recover it, when I caught a glimpse of his countenance, while it could be seen by no one else at the table. It was radiant, with the quizzical expression which was its natural character, but which I had never seen it assume except when we were alone together, and when he unbent himself freely. In an instant afterward he stood erect, confronting Hermann, and so total an alteration of countenance in so short a period I certainly never saw before. For a moment I even fancied that I had misconceived him, and that he was sober in earnest. He appeared to be stifling with passion, and his face was cadaverously white. For a short time he remained silent, apparently striving to master his emotion. Having at length seemingly succeeded, he reached a decanter which stood near him, saying as he held it firmly clenched, "The language you have thought proper to employ, mein Herr Hermann, in addressing yourself to me is objectionable in so many particulars that I have neither temper nor time for a specification. That my opinions, however, are not the opinions to be expected from a gentleman, is an observation so directly offensive as to allow me but one line of conduct. Some courtesy, nevertheless, is due to the presence of this company, and to yourself at this moment as my guest. You will pardon me, therefore, if upon this consideration I deviate slightly from its general usage among gentlemen in similar cases of personal affront. You will forgive me for the moderate tax I shall make upon your imagination, and endeavour to consider for an instant the reflection of your person in yonder mirror as the living Mein Herr Hermann himself. This being done, there will be no difficulty in whatever. I shall discharge this decanter of wine at your image in yonder mirror, and thus fulfill all the spirit, if not the exact letter, of resentment to your insult, while the necessity of physical violence to your person will be obviated." With these words, he held the decanter full of wine against the mirror which hung directly opposite Hermann, striking the reflection of his person with great precision, excuse me, and of course shattering the glass into fragments. The whole company at once started to their feet, and with the exception of myself and Ritzner, took their departure. As Hermann went out, the Baron whispered me that I should follow him and make an effort of my services. To this I agreed, not knowing precisely what to make of so ridiculous a piece of business. The duellist accepted my aid with his stiff and ultra recherche air, and taking my arm, led me to his apartment. I could hardly forbear laughing in his face while he proceeded to discuss with the profoundest gravity what he termed the refined peculiar character of the insult he had received. After a tiresome harangue in his ordinary style, he took down from his book from his book of shelves a number of musty volumes on the subject of the duello, and entertained me for a long time with their contents, reading aloud and commenting earnestly as he read. I can just remember the titles from some of the works. There were the Ordinance of Philippe le Bel on single combat, the Theatre of Honour by Favin, and a treatise on the permission of duels by Andy. He displayed also, with much pomposity, Brantôme's Memoir of Duels, published at Cologne, 1666, in the types of Elzevir, a precious, unique vellum paper volume with a fine margin and bound by Derome. But he requested my attention particularly, and with the air of mysterious sagacity, to a thick octavo written in barbarous Latin by one Hedelin, a Frenchman, and having the quaint title Duelli lex scripta et non aliterque. From this he read me one of the drollest chapters in the world concerning injuriae per applicationem per constructionem et per se, about half of which he averred was strictly applicable to his own refined peculiar case. He averred was strictly applicable to his own refined peculiar case, although not one syllable of the whole matter could I understand for the life of me. Having finished the chapter, he closed the book and demanded what I thought necessary to be done. I replied that I had entire confidence in his superior delicacy of feeling and would abide by what he proposed. But with his answer he seemed flattered and sat down to write a note to the Baron. It ran thus: Sir, my dear friend M.P. will hand you this note. I find it incumbent upon my request at your earliest convenience an explanation of the evening's occurrences at your chambers. In the event of your declination of this request, as Mr. P. will be happy to arrange with any friend whom you may appoint the steps preliminary to a meeting. With sentiments of your perfect respect, your most humble servant, Johann Hermann. To the Baron Ritzner von Jung, August 18th, 18 something or such. Not knowing what better to do, I called upon Ritzner with this epistle. Oh, I see. I completely missed that he followed Hammond. Anyway, I called upon Ritzner with this epistle, and he bowed as I presented it, then with grave countenance motioned me to a seat. Having perused the cartel, he wrote the following reply, which I carried to Hermann. Sir, through our common friend Mr. P., I have received your note of this evening. Upon due reflection, I frankly admit the propriety of the explanation you suggest. This being admitted, I still find great difficulty, owing to the refined peculiar nature of our disagreement, and of the personal affront offered on my part. In so doing, what I have to say by way of apology, as to meet all the minute exigencies and all the variable shudders of the case, I have great influence, however, on that extreme delicacy of discrimination in matters appertaining to the rules of etiquette, for which you have been so long and so preeminently distinguished. With perfect certainty, therefore, of being comprehended, I beg leave, in lieu of offering any sentiments of my own, to refer you to the opinions of Sieur Hedelin as set forth in the 9th paragraph of the chapter in Jurice per applicationem per construction et per se, in his duelli lex scripta et non aliterque. The nicety of your discernment in all the matters here treated will be sufficient, I am sure, to convince you that the mere circumstances of me referring you to this admirable passage ought to satisfy your request as a man of honour for explanation. With sentiments of profound respect, your most obedient servant, von Jung to Herr Johann Hermann, August 18th, 18 something such. Hermann commenced the perusal of this epistle with a scowl, which, however, was converted into a smile of the most ludicrous self-complacency as he went to the rigmarole about injuria per acclamatum per constructum et per se. Having finished reading, he begged me, with the blandest of all possible smiles, to be seated while he made reference to the treatise in question. Turning to the passage specified, he read it with great terror to himself, then closed the book and desired me, in my character of confidential acquaintance, to express to the Baron von Jung his exalted sense of his chivalrous behaviour, and in that second to assure him that the explanation offered was of the fullest, most honourable, and most unequivocally satisfactory nature. Somewhat amazed at all this, I made my retreat to the Baron. He seemed to receive Hermann's amicable letter as a matter of course, and after a few words of general conversation, went to an inner room and brought out the everlasting treatise Duelli lex scripta et non aliter. He handed me the volume and asked me to look over some portion of it. I did so, but to little purpose, not being able to gather the least particle of meaning. He then took the book himself and read me a chapter aloud. To my surprise, what he read proved to be the most horribly absurd account of a duel between two baboons. He now explained the mystery, showing that the volume, as it appeared prima facie, was written upon the plan of the nonsense verses of Du Bartas. That is to say, the language was ingeniously framed so as to present to the ear all the outward signs of intelligibility and even profundity, while in fact not a shadow of meaning existed. The key to the whole was found in leaving out every second and third word alternately when there appeared a series of ludicrous quizzes upon the single combat as practised in modern times. The Baron afterwards informed me that he had purposely thrown the treatise in Hermann's way 2 or 3 weeks before the adventure, and that he was satisfied, from the general tenor of his conversation, that he had studied it with the deepest attention and firmly believed it to be a work of unusual merit. Upon this hint he proceeded. Hermann would have died 1,000 deaths rather than acknowledge his inability to understand anything and everything in the universe that had ever been written about the duello. Professor Hermann. Yeah, the Baron is throwing holes around. Oh, we talking about Herman from Stalker. Herman versus Faust. Yes, well, you can't kill. You can't kill God. Oh, is that pseudo? Is that a mug from you? You can't kill God. You can't kill the sky up above. Thank you very much for it. Yes, it's a good size. I like the handle. I like that. In fact, it's not. Got a little rough texture to it. It's not super smooth. Uh, Versus. Yeah, yeah. I guess ergonomically shaped mug, especially for this mug. Nice mug for this mug. All right, gang. Um, I think we're going to call it an evening. It is almost 11 o'clock. Mug versus mug. Thank you all, and we've got to be right back. screen function as well now. For that, maybe you didn't see it at the beginning. Yeah, look at that! Look at that! Isn't that awesome? Amazing. I know you got going back to the States. So safe travels there, Monster Heart and Alison. Yeah, you know, look. Yeah, Garfina. There's the goat from Skalitz. There's Mango. There's Istvan and Radzik in the background. My hat from Zimmerman. Be right back, written in gravy. For my red wine reduction steak. Even Michael Horse, absolutely. It's all in there. The sword, of course. The Zimmer hat. Sexy chef, be right back screen. 40 cooked. Indeed he did. Indeed he did. All right, chaps and chapesses, lords and ladies, foxes, hounds, robbers and cops and robbers. We're going to be streaming on Sunday with the old soup. If anybody's joining for that, I'll see how it goes. I don't know. I'm not even sure. I'm going to find all these ingredients, but we're going to give it a go. Is anybody else streaming that we can do a raid on? Let's see how that goes. Thank you for everybody for subscribing and resubscribing. It's really helpful and important. So Babush Toad, Alison, Jade, Barbarian, like a son of a gun. The hype train was awesome. Thank you very much. We've got 1,302 followers now. Amazing. ICP Yowie, whoever that anonymous gifter was. Oh dear. Ziggy Wiggy Stardust, appreciate y'all. Dunny should be, he's sorted that out, has he? Yeah, try to cook along this time. Check for the ingredients though, me meron pan, because it's a Mexican soup, so I don't know where you live with and get all those ingredients. Sure. So we'll give Donnie a raid, yeah? Not sorted, but you can stream. Okay. Oh, what a faff, hey? /raid. Sir Donnie. All right. Breakfast soup from California. Cool. Nice one. You got 10 rows then. Are you knitting, Babush Toad? All right. We're going for a raid. Is that going to work? 8 seconds. 7, 6, 5. See y'all. See you soon. Raiders!